Survival guides. I wish that someone would have given me more structure or a survival guide or just laid it all out for me in the very beginning. I'm going to share with you what we've learned at Spheric Reptiles over the last 2 years and from what we've talked to our mentors about and other just financial advisors and other people that are just in business and some of the things that we can look forward to, and maybe we can cut those off at the path before we get there. And I'm going to share with you right now.
These brothers, my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, never gotta roll with ice. These brothers, my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, never gotta roll with ice.
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and I thank you so much for tuning in to this video on a survival guide for new breeders. I think that it's appropriate, right? Because 80% of all businesses fail within the first year, and they continue to fail at an 80% clip out to year 5, right? So you can see that very few businesses succeed. If we look at those that got into breeding ball pythons around the COVID time, there was a lot of people and the prices were really high. But now if we look for those same breeders, then they're few and far between. Now those big guys are still there, but they were there before and they reaped the benefit of having those animals available, charging a little bit more for the animals as well, but they're still there nonetheless. And you can see that a lot of these people that bought in, especially when it comes to ball pythons, are just not there anymore. So where is the retention rate at? So just to let you know, at Spheric Reptiles, we've actually been in business since 2022. So right at the very end of COVID, like when society was opening back up, people were going back to work. Well, some people still worked at home, but more or less, that's when we started the business. And we started with an LLC. We got the website. We registered our domain name, all that stuff that you need when you're starting a business, right? And we wanted to produce animals as early as 2023, like maybe that year, you know, the very next year. But we didn't get our first animals. We didn't start producing animals until last year, which was 2024. That's when we had our first clutch. Now this year in 2025, we're going to have like 10, I think, to 12 clutches. Now that I'm looking at some of these other females that are going through ovulation and right now are in their, I guess, yeah, they're just waiting to drop. But nonetheless, you know, I got some bad advice, and that bad advice held us back for 2 years. Now, we were able to still stay afloat because, of course, when you're just raising animals, you're just a pet keeper. You're not really doing shows. You're not doing a lot of other things. You don't have an incubator probably, but you're thinking about getting it. You're thinking about getting a rack system. You got your rats down and where you're getting them from and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, it would have helped to have that survival guide. So we wasted basically 2 years of just feeding animals, which is never a waste. But when you're trying to produce animals, that 2 years is a waste. So I'm gonna break this down into year 1, year 2, and year 3, so that if you're looking at the chapters, you can look at each chapter, and of course, I'll have it titled, and then there'll be little, you know, A, B's, and C's in each one, so that you can fast forward through whichever one that you see is best fit for you. So starting off with year number 1, the very worst thing you can do is have improper pairing decisions. What does that mean? So that means that you either are picking animals that are already in low demand. So you say you want to breed pastels. Pastels are incredible. You want to breed pastel spiders. Both of them are incredible, but you're picking them at a time when the demand is very low, right? So people don't really want to buy those because they're everywhere. Now, if you have other combinations of incomplete dominant or recessive traits, then someone might. But just to get a single gene of those and you're choosing that as a breeding project, well, you've kind of missed the boat. So that might be why people are having issues with moving those animals. And not to say that people shouldn't produce animals. Like if you're producing animals just for you, that's one thing. But if you're producing animals to either sell at shows or to sell online, that's something completely different. Secondly, of this same thing is compatibility issues. Now, we know some animals shouldn't be bred together, right? So we definitely know that we don't want to breed spiders. Now, if you buy, what is it, a caramel albino, then you know that you're going to have issues with this animal even being able to get fertilized. And there's countless other animals that you really want to hold off on pairing up because they'll either make a duckbill or something. So I definitely would say research those animals completely so that you're not trying to breed those animals that have already had detrimental effects from doing so. But this is like head and shoulders the number one reason why people struggle in their first year of breeding ball pythons. Looking at the screen here, we have I think this is a VE 300X2, and it is a pulse proportional thermostat, and it definitely holds the temperatures at 90 degrees Fahrenheit so that the animals are always able to go somewhere and warm themselves up. Which, speaking of the animals, while we're talking about the husbandry, because that's the number one thing that'll determine your success, make sure that you always have clean water. You got an area where the animal can thermoregulate themselves and going from hot to cold. And just because you think that when you pick up the snake that it's cold, remember you're 98.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So anything you pick up that's not 98.7 degrees Fahrenheit will feel cool to you. That even means things that are 95 degrees. They're going to feel cool to you. The only things that feel hot are things that are warmer than you. I think of the first year, another thing that's really important is maybe overbreeding, like so hitting double clutches on animals that are too young, or just pairing up animals that are too young altogether. Now, one of the advices that we got in the beginning was to start off with hatchlings. I definitely never agree with that, never. I mean, maybe with the males if you need a year, but I would definitely get, if you can, proven adults. Now, you'll pay a little bit more for them, and they might come with some issues, but in the long run, those animals, if you get them from a reliable source, they will be more advantageous to your breeding efforts than starting off with a hatchling, which for females could take up to 2 to 3 years to reach sexual maturity. And for some males, 1 to 2 years, being just being honest. Because the number one thing we need to think about is body conditioning. So you technically, your males could start breeding at about 700 to 800 grams. Some people breed them a little bit lower. Your females should definitely be around 1,500 grams. Now, we have bred females that were short of 1,500 grams, but they were over 3.5 years old when we did so. And in pairing them up, well, what you'd have to do in that situation is use an ultrasound so that you can track the follicle development. So if the follicles are developing, because yeah, in the wild, the animals don't say, hey, are you 3 years old? Or are you ready? Or they just go up to an animal, and if the female accepts the male does what he's going to do. Or if the male's not old enough, he just runs away to begin with. He's never attracted to the pheromones that the female produces. When you're in your first year of actually breeding, you're going to have to do some incubation. So the number one thing to make sure that you know is egg box setup, that you have a reliable incubator source, that you have some sort of a way to either, like we bought the Wilbanks incubator, so it's all in one, but even if you get the sea serpents, make sure that you have your probe in the right spot, and then use actual thermostats or temperature pushes or something like that, so where you can see the temperature inside the incubator, because you shouldn't just trust what the thermostat says. Always go with a secondary source, because you don't want to fry the eggs, or as the way I see it, the animals do so much work that if you fuck it up during the incubation process or the egg box setup process, then that's all on you. And these videos are everywhere for you to just see. In year 2, one of the issues that we ran across because we had more clutches is that we found that it was harder to get some of the hatchlings, I mean the entire groups, onto food. Now, I remember that for our third clutch, I think it was our third clutch, right? Yes. So for our third clutch, man, I mean, 6 to 7 animals, I had to assist feed them like 2 weeks in a row to get them on food. And I mean, now if you're feeding 6 animals, now, so I'm trying to assist feed them, and then I'm trying to sit awfully still. And I think that some of you might recognize that or have already dealt with that. But man, I'm telling you, don't get frustrated. This is what we need to do. You have to teach them how to eat. But for some, that could be so like stressful. So I would say my advice is, what we've learned is to start off with a live mouse hopper. And I know some people don't want to feed live. Some people never feed live. But when it comes to getting these animals on food, the first thing I got to do is get them to eat. That's the very first thing that I've learned now. Get them to eat. And as soon as I get them eating, I immediately switch to frozen-thawed, and I use a vacuum sealer method so that I'm offering them a dry, warm prey item. So because they're so young, they don't really know the activity. And so you can use your tongs to shake the mouse in front of them, and then that will trigger a feeding response. And plus this mouse hopper is very warm. And then I either go to either mice or I go to rat pups, depending on if they're male or female. But hey, that's something that in year 2 that I never even considered in year 1, because I was going through everything at, the first time. So don't be discouraged by what someone else is producing, even if you're producing at around the same time. So maybe they've been breeding for 2 years, and don't be discouraged because they're a little bit further ahead on their projects than you, because this is not a race. You want to make sure that you're doing things right and that you're credible and that you're bringing animals that are healthy for everybody to either have as a pet or as a future breeder, but either way, they're pets, right? So I'm going to say, don't be discouraged. And in fact, don't even chase what someone else is doing. Like I've said before, and I firmly believe this, only try to produce things that you cannot buy already. So if there's 100 of them on Morph Market or 200 of them on Morph Market or anywhere else you'd be looking, don't try to make that. Just buy from the person that's already making it. But what you can do is if you search for a particular combination of genes, whether they're incomplete dominant or they're recessive, and you find that there's like none, it's never been created, or there's only like one page of 21 or less, then that might be a project that you could get into when you do a little bit more research as to like why people aren't doing it. But if you see it's just because it's a gene that no one's really working because people are chasing double, triple, quadruple recessives, then that might be the exact project that might be best fitting for you as well as your future customers. For year 3, so we're about to go into year 3. So I've done a lot of research and talking to other breeders as to what hurdles that they encountered around year 3 and maybe to year 5, because most of them said that from year 3 to 5, you're going to have the same issues come up. So one of the things that I found out is that they were all similar in what they went through at year 3, because you've got to remember, they've already produced animals for 1 year, 2 year. Now in their 3rd year, something happens. So what happens? Well, I tell you what's happening. So they're either going to be scaling up because they're producing more animals, or they will be stalling. So I found it's either or. They're going to be scaling up or they'll be stalling. So you don't really want to stall, but you might want to consider how much you scale up. And if you ask any businessmen or people that are they've been in business for over, I'm going to say 10 years or 20 years, the number one thing that they'll tell you is that don't try to grow too fast, too quick. Now, I see a lot of people doing that. They dump a lot of money into things, and you don't get to recoup all this money right off the bat. And that's why when you go and do your taxes, then everything, all the equipment's depreciated, because even they know, the IRS knows, that if they just depreciate it out, chances are you'll go out of business before you ever get the full monies back from the items that your assets, right? So you end up selling them off for a lot cheaper, and they won't even have to reimburse you for the full price. I mean, I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but that's why they do depreciation of assets over time instead of just giving you your check right there to refund you the amount. I mean, also misalignment. So if you misalign with your target audience, which means that you aren't able to sell your animals either through now Morph Market or Palm Street, I think those are going to be the 2 more popular items to sell, or platforms to sell your animals on, or if you're vending shows. If you're not able to sell those, then it all works out to the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. That's why 80% of all businesses fail within the 1st year. For one, they don't have a plan. If you look at the E-Myth, these are just books that you can read. So the E-Myth talks about the franchise model. So you should technically pay attention to this, because he also hits on the same statistics. If you don't plan to succeed, you're going to plan to fail. So if you haven't made a plan, and not to say that you have to make a plan right off the bat because you don't know, but after year 1 and year 2, you have enough information to where you can put together a plan to determine your growth. And I think that even though we started out planning in the beginning, our plans have changed tremendously from year 1 to 2. And then going into year 3, we have a totally new, different set of plans. Now, we still have our core values of things that we're focusing on. But man, I'm trying to tell you, your plans will definitely change, because as you scale up or you stall, then you'll either have to get more feeders. You'll have to determine whether you're going to buy your feeders or your rodents, or you will produce them yourself. You got to determine if you have enough rack space. You got to determine your time allotments. Now, it might be getting to the point for some of y'all, not for us, that you're considering going full time, or if you just need to allocate some dedicated time to this for shows and putting animals online and things like that. But ultimately, by year 3, you have enough animals to where you're definitely spending more time with your animals, cleaning them and their husbandry and feeding them, and just really just doing everything it takes to take care of those animals than you were in year 1 and 2. So here are some things to consider in year 3 that I was told by breeders that I trust. For one, limit your pairings. So have a number of pairings that you're going to do, and cap those pairings. Now, I've done another video on being able to reproduce or produce animals every year, and so you can see it in the video right here. Definitely it discusses using about 60% of your animals, or 70%, because not all of them will go, but at least that'll give you consistent amounts of animals to produce without maybe maximizing all your efforts. So if you breed all of your animals, say you got 20 females and you breed them all and they all go, so we got to figure that's on average of like 160 babies that you're making for that 1 year. Well, most of those females won't be able to be rebred until the following year. So by the time you're able to breed them, you've missed the whole season, right? You know, as early as 10 months, but to get that animal back in shape, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that. And then you also want to limit your pairings of your males. So don't overexhaust and kill your males either. Make sure that you pair them up for a little bit, and then you let them eat, let them get a little fat like me, and then all of a sudden you'll have a better male for breeding that next season. So, and ultimately some of your males and your females, because you're breeding forward, you won't want to breed them as often anyway. I mean, unless you're trying to produce just one thing, which is okay if that's what you try to do, but definitely set that number of pairings that you want to do for the year. Well, I hope that this survival guide has helped you. And I know sometimes I just got to make videos like this. I try to show snakes a lot more, which hopefully you've enjoyed seeing our number 6 clutch. I think that was a number 6 clutch. It was named after the ocean. So we got Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean. So these are the names of the animals like we always want to name them. So they actually got a first and a last name, which is kind of weird for our animals to have that. Nope. But I hope that this helps you guys, because at the end of the day, we want more breeders to be available, so that as the number of people that actually start owning reptiles, as it increases from 3 to 4 to 5 to hopefully 7 to 8% of the U.S. economy, or of the U.S. Of people in the United States, or just of people, as it increases from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 of people that own reptiles, then, you know, we're definitely going to need breeders, because, you know, if we look at it, even though we might say that there's a lot of ball pythons on the market, there just aren't a lot of people that have them. So imagine if we were to go from 3 to 5% to just 7%, like just 2 more percentage points, then that whole amount of excess or surplus ball pythons would be wiped out, and there would be none. It would be a supply and demand curve again. So I'm just really trying to keep all of the new breeders and current breeders, or people thinking about breeding, excited about this hobby, and just trying to create something new. So hopefully this is something that comes over as well. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about it as well. Let me know what you think about our clutches that we're hatching out for this year, and stick around. In about 4 videos, I'm hoping that I can let you guys know exactly what's ready to be put on Morph Market. And if nothing else, guys, enjoy the time that you spend with your reptiles, and definitely cherish that time that you have with your families. Thank you.
I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, never got to roll with ice.